Why bats are the most insane mammals alive. This is a bat. This is also a bat. Well, you probably know what a bat looks like, but did you know this is the smallest bat? And this is the biggest bat. And this one is 800 times heavier than the other. The entire bat species lineup is full of weird members with different eating habits and these crazy-looking faces. Let me talk about these hand-winged creatures that contribute 1/4 of all mammal species. Let's start with the smallest bat, the bumblebee bat, the world's smallest mammal by skull size and body length. If we go by just mass, it's the Etruscan shrew, but this video is not about shrews, so moving on. The bumblebee bat lives in the limestone caves of western Thailand and southeastern Myanmar. Now for the biggest bat, the golden-crowned flying fox. Surprisingly, they're herbivores and mostly eat figs. And they roost in mega colonies which could hold up to 5,000 to 15,000 bats. They are big, but not as big as a human, though their wingspan can reach 1.7 meters, or 5 foot 7 inches. This is a hoary bat. They fly long distances. They travel over 3,000 kilometers to migrate from Canada to Central America, and they can fly at really high altitudes, up to 2,000 meters. To put that into perspective, that's higher than stacking 2 Burj Khalifas on top of each other. And this animal weighs less than your breakfast toast. And they live alone by themselves, just like me. Speaking of bats that migrate, noctules travel 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers across Europe from Russia to the Mediterranean sometimes, and they're one of the fastest bats. They can reach up to 120 to 160 kilometers per hour, and they weigh only 20 to 40 grams. That's lighter than a AA battery. They follow wind corridors like miniature geese. But these are not the fastest bats. That title goes to the Brazilian free-tailed bat. It can reach speeds over 99 miles, or 160 kilometers per hour, and it is the fastest living mammal. These bats live in mega colonies of 20 million during summers. They come out together from the caves as a swarm, and they form a spiraling vortex so big it shows up on weather radar as a storm. They consume flying agricultural pests on such a large scale that they save farmers $1 billion every year. This is a male hammer-headed bat. They look like someone edited a moose head onto a bat body. They evolved this head to attract females. Dozens of male bats gather and perform loud calls. These gatherings are called leks. Females fly over the lek and choose the males with the deepest, loudest, most impressive calls. So, bigger heads means louder calls, which means more mating. Female hammerheads look normal, and the male hammerheads are the loudest bats. Their entire face acts as an amplifier. This is a spotted bat. They have long ears, longer than their entire body, which they fold to protect themselves while roosting, or inflate to amplify sound and hear insects while they hunt. Their echolocation calls are low enough in frequency that we can hear them, and it sounds like this. These bats are so rare that a lot of biologists spend years without seeing one, because they roost in tiny cliffs high above the ground, making them nearly impossible to find. They live in Arizona, Nevada, Utah, California deserts, and parts of western Canada. Now for the vampire bats. Everyone probably knows about these bats, but they're not as scary as people think. Yes, they do drink any vertebrate's blood given the opportunity, but they don't prefer humans, because we are a difficult shape, we use blankets, and we have low surface area. They prefer livestock, because livestock have a lot of surface area and a lot of blood. In fact, before Europeans settled in South America, there were no livestock there. But once Europeans brought cattle, the vampire bats shifted to feeding on them. This caused a growth in their numbers, since cattle are abundant and unprotected at night. And vampire bats share blood with each other, but only with friends, relatives, and bats that have fed them before. It's a system of reciprocal altruism. You help me now, I'll help you later. Pairs of bats sometimes share food for years, even forming best friend bonds. This behavior is so reliable that scientists compare it to human cooperation patterns. This is very important for them, because if a vampire bat fails to find a host, bird, cow, etc., for even 48 to 72 hours, it can starve to death because their metabolism is extremely fast, blood gives almost no fat, and they can't store much energy. So bats that fed well will vomit up blood and give it to hungry roostmates. Experiments showed they remember who shared with them, who refused, who they groom, and who they roost next to. If a bat never shares, it gets cut off by the group. Now let's talk about marshmallows. Oh, I mean the bats that look like marshmallows, but don't eat them. These are Honduran white bats, the only completely white bats in the world. What's special about them is that they don't hang upside down. Instead, they build tents. This is a heliconia leaf. They cut the veins of huge heliconia leaves to make them fold naturally, and they sleep in them like this, in mini huddles of 5 to 10 bats. They're found only in Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. Now, let's talk about bats that come out during the day. Yes, there are bats that are diurnal. The yellow-winged bat hunts in late afternoon and early morning, and surprisingly, they use echolocation instead of eyes, even though they hunt during the day. They use broadband calls that help them target insects in cluttered, low-bush habitats instead of open skies. This makes them more like small woodland birds than typical night-hunting bats. They're found in East and Central Africa, and they sunbathe on purpose. They perch in open sun to warm their bodies. They live in monogamous pairs. A typical group includes one male, one female, and sometimes their kid. And let's talk about the dawn bat. As the name suggests, they're most active during dawn, and they drink nectar. They have long tongues for reaching deep flowers. They're more like humming bats than regular bats. They're one of the most widespread bats in Asia, from India to the Philippines, and they rely more on eyes and smell than echolocation. Now let's talk about the Spider-Man of bats, the sucker-footed bat. They have arms and legs that work like suckers, but unlike Spider-Man, who has tiny hairs, these bats have hairless pads that secrete natural glue, which they use to stick to walls. They basically use a combination of adhesion, suction, and moisture, which makes them completely unique among bats. This is a fishing bat. I know they look like bulldogs. They're called bulldog fishing bats, and they look like that because they have split upper lips which help them while echolocating ripples on water. It's a tactile sensory system, like whiskers, and their jaws help them grip fish. Bats are unbelievably diverse, from tiny bumblebee bats to giant flying foxes, from high-speed migrants to moose-headed megabats, from blood-sharing vampires to marshmallow tent makers, from diurnal sunbathers to literal Spider-Man bats. So, tell me which bat surprised you the most, and I'll make a full deep dive video on it. And remember, bats aren't scary. They're some of the coolest and most important animals on the planet.